I'm about to sit down with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
You have to understand, we're fighting Hamas. We're not fighting Palestinian civilians. We're very close to finishing off the terrorists. We have to complete the job.
Do you think that October 7th gave people a sense of moral authority to express their anti-Semitism? Do you believe there will be a lasting peace in your lifetime? Well, we're not in the studio because I am in West Palm Beach, Florida, where I'm about to sit down with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, we've spoken before, and it was in the spring of 2024 at the height of the war with Hamas, of course, after the October 7th invasion. And at that time, Prime Minister Netanyahu was really wrestling with getting Hamas under control. And he looked me in the eye at that time and said, "I will not stop until we have militarily eradicated Hamas. We have taken them out of governance on the Gaza Strip." He was very much committed to that, and I intend to ask him where he thinks that is now, if he thinks it's been accomplished militarily and governance-wise. I'm also going to ask him how he feels about the criticism of the humanitarian crisis that people say have been created in the Gaza Strip, and if he believes that there is a chance for peace in the Middle East. I want to know how he feels the Israeli populace is doing, and whether he believes that the objectives that he set back in May of 2024 have been achieved. I'm really interested in how he looks at this, because this has been one of the longest wars they faced, and the cost has been really high politically, humanitarian-wise, and has taken a tremendous toll on him and the Israeli people, both domestically and internationally. So take a look at the interview, and we'll talk afterwards. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for sitting down with me again.
Pleasure seeing you.
We talked in May of 24 at the height of the war in Jerusalem, and I was honored to have you sit down and speak with me. Things have changed a lot since then. The hostages are home.
Correct.
And I have to say, I guess my first question is, with the hostages home now and the war has changed dramatically, when you wake up each morning, what's the single responsibility that weighs the most on you right now?
It's a continuous one. It's to protect the one and only Jewish state, to assure its future, its security, its prosperity, and to extend peace with our Arab neighbors. And we're well on way of doing that, because we battered the Iran terror axis that threatened to destroy us and wants to destroy you, America. They chant death to Israel, death to America. Well, they're not going to achieve either one, but I think that axis is going down the tube.
You've led Israel through other conflicts, but I sense, talking with you then, hearing you speak since then, and even in the very first conversation we're having right now, that this war has a very personal gravity with you. How is this war different?
It's different first, it's a lot longer. You know, most of the battles that we had were a lot shorter, and this is bigger because it's a seven-front war. It was a seven-front war, organized by Iran and its terrorist proxies in the Middle East. And we were invaded. We had a surprise attack by one of these proxies, Hamas. We were attacked with rockets and ballistic missiles from all around. They thought they were going to get us. They thought they were going to destroy us. They murdered our women after they raped them. They beheaded our men. They burnt babies. They took over 200 hostages to the dungeons of Gaza, where they tortured them. It was a very tough call. On the second day of the war, though, I said, yeah, it began very bad, but we will change the face of the Middle East. because I knew that we were not only dealing with Hamas or with Hezbollah, we were dealing with Iran. And we proceeded to deal with every one of those proxies. But at the same time, we knew that we had to prevent Iran from racing to produce nuclear weapons. Because if they can't destroy Israel by invasion, they could destroy Israel with atomic bombs. So we had to make sure that they don't get these atomic bombs, and we stopped them. We pushed them back on this, and we battered their allies. It's a much tougher war, but the success is unbelievable. And it's due to the courage, the incredible courage of Israel's soldiers. You know, we called them, initially we used to say, well, you know, this is the TikTok generation. Will they fight? Boy, do they fight. They have such courage, such motivation. And the second thing, it's the strength of the Israeli people. Bombarded by ballistic missiles, you know, 2,000 pounds coming at you, falling from the sky at Mach 6 or Mach 8, obliterate everything that they hit. The people stood. And the third thing, I think, is the decisions, the wise and often brave decisions that the government took in order to prosecute this war to its present achievements. And there's a fourth thing. You know what that is? It's called President Trump. President Trump, his clarity, his resolution, his willingness to contribute where America alone could contribute, and that is to hit the deepest bunker, nuclear bunker, with what he calls those beautiful B-2s. There's something.
Yes.
And so the combined effort of Israel, backed by President Trump and the United States, I think has changed the Middle East, exactly as I said on day 2.
Well, he and I have spoken about this on numerous occasions, and he's formed a presidential commission on religious liberty and appointed me to that commission, and we have rabbis on that commission, and he is deeply committed to religious liberty in this country and around the world. And you are quite right. He is this is very personal with him, and he is very committed to it. And we are meeting every month to focus on religious liberty, and the rabbis on the commission speak about this, and the anti-Semitism in America and around the world is a very real threat that has to be dealt with. And this, do you think that October 7th gave people a sense of moral authority to express their anti-Semitism? It turned up so hockey stick dramatically after October 7th.
Well, because the internet has been flooded by fake propaganda describing Israel as the aggressor instead of the country that's been aggressed upon, saying that falsely accusing us of genocide, when we have sacrificed our soldiers in taking out terrorist places that we could have just carpet bombed, and we didn't. We do everything in our power to keep civilians out of harm's way, and Hamas did everything in their power to keep them in harm's way. They shoot people. When we tell Palestinian civilians, please get out of this neighborhood because we're coming in, Hamas shoots them if they want to come out. But they're not only targeting us. And they not only chant death to America, death to Israel, death to America, they want to get rid of us in order to get rid of you. But they're also going after minorities, and specifically against Christians. Christians throughout the Middle East are being oppressed. They're being driven out. It's something that the only safe place for Christians, where the Christian community is growing and thriving, is in Israel. They've been kicked out of Turkey. They've been oppressed in Syria, in Lebanon, in the areas that we handed over to the Palestinians some 30 years ago. We were controlling Bethlehem, the birthplace of Jesus. At that time, the overwhelming majority of the Arabs living in Bethlehem were Christian Arabs, over 80%. Now, after 30 years, they're down to 20% because they're oppressed, and so they leave. But that's not what's happening in Israel itself. In Israel itself, they're growing, they're thriving. They serve in the army. Christian Arabs serve in the army, very brave soldiers, because they know that Israel is fighting not only our battle, but their battle. And I'll tell you something, and I also see what the president is doing in Nigeria. He's right. He's absolutely right.
Right.
Those fanatic Muslims are just massacring Christians. And to the extent that we can help, both by expressing the moral support that I'm doing now, but also if we can give intel, that's part of our mission. We defend ourselves, sure, but in defending ourselves, we also defend our friends, our allies, and most importantly, the Christian communities around the Middle East.
Well, they're being murdered all over the world right now. We're talking about 200,000-300,000
Yes.
around the globe. And I have to tell you, Prime Minister, I've tried to be empathetic and put myself in your shoes and say, if I was sitting quietly thinking about this, how I would balance the security of Israel with the humanitarian concerns of the Palestinians, because I know you have to weigh how do I keep Israel secure, but also be concerned about the loss of life in Gaza, the Palestinian loss of life. How do you work through that? How do you balance that? Because there has been substantial loss of life in the Gaza Strip. There's no avoiding it. You looked me in the eye when we talked back in May of 24, and you said, I will not stop until Hamas is eradicated.
Right.
If I do, they will just regroup and come back. It's not if, it is when. Are you still committed to their total eradication, and where do we stand on getting that done? I know you have to weigh how do I keep Israel secure, but also be concerned about the loss of life in Gaza, the Palestinian loss of life. How do you work through that? How do you balance that? Because there has been substantial loss of life in the Gaza Strip. There's no avoiding it.
Yes, you're quite right, because when you're fighting in the densest urban warfare theater in the planet, with 500 kilometers of tunnels, terror tunnels underneath Gaza, you never had anything like that. In Vietnam, you had tunnels, but they were out in the jungle. They weren't under Hanoi, okay? Right. So here you have them embedded 50 meters below ground, the terrorists, 50 meters above ground, and they don't let the civilians leave. One of the ways that we minimize the civilian casualties over time is by having the ability to overcome Hamas's attempts to keep civilians in the combat zones. And so they left. And when they leave, we can deal with the terrorists. And I think we're fighting, you have to understand, we're fighting Hamas. We're not fighting Palestinian civilians. We're fighting these terrorists who shoot Palestinians. You know, they have thousands of terrorists still left there with AK-47s. And if anyone says, I want to end the Hamas tyrannies, they're Palestinians in Gaza who are fighting Hamas. And what do? They take anyone suspected of that, put him in the town square, and shoot him in the back of the head. So this is a tyrannical terrorist organization. We've managed, I think, to reduce the civilian casualties. That's been going down. We've given tremendous humanitarian aid. There are 600 trucks going into Gaza with food and medical support and so on. But ultimately, I think the president said the right thing, as he usually does. He said the next phase is we got to get rid of what remains of Hamas. They have to disarm. And we have to have a new Gaza, a free Gaza, a peaceful Gaza. And you can't have that when you have these murderous terrorists who are who not only want to destroy Israel, but who are destroying anyone who opposes their tyranny. So they have to disarm. That's the next phase. And we're going to do everything in our power to get them to disarm and demilitarize Gaza.
But you looked me in the eye when we talked back in May of 24, and you said, I will not stop until Hamas is eradicated.
Right.
If I do, they will just regroup and come back. It's not if, it is when. Are you still committed to their total eradication, and where do we stand on getting that done?
I'm committed to eradicating, as I said, their military and governance capability in Gaza. We're pretty close to that. You know, there's an effort right now through the United States and what they call the international force. That's President Trump's 20-point peace plan. And the president says, well, should we give it a chance? And I said, yes, absolutely. If it could be done, as he said, the easy way, fine. And if it's not going to be done the easy way, it'll be done the hard way. But it has to be done. They have to be disarmed. Gaza has to be demilitarized. And I think also de-radicalized, which is what happened in Germany and in Japan after you won World War II. You not only destroyed the military and governing capability of the Nazi Party or the imperialist regime in Japan, you also de-radicalized the population. You taught them that there's a possibility of a different life. You don't have to go out and commit, you have kamikaze bombers or suicide bombers and all that. You can have a different life. And look at Japan today. Look at Germany today. There is no Nazi army there, no Nazi government, and the same thing applies for Japan. That's what we have to do in Gaza. It starts with disarming Hamas.
With echo chambers in America, with these news organizations and algorithmic amplification,
yes,
we have this fake news being fed to different people. I'm curious if you believe that Hamas choreographed this from the beginning and caused a swing in the PR front, because Hamas made this brutal assassination attack on October 7th, fled back to Gaza, hid among civilians, hospitals, and children, knowing that Israel would retaliate. And as a result, there were civilian casualties, and then held that up to the world and said, look at what's going on. Do you believe that in that they value death and the rest of the world values life, do you believe that this was choreographed by them to sacrifice their own people as pawns in a public relations ploy?
I think you're right. We fought a 7-front war. There's an 8th front. And the 8th front is the battle for truth. The battle for truth against all these lies that are being disseminated in the social network. And that requires a big effort, which I think we have to, and there's only one thing you can do, The only way you can combat the lies, speak the truth.
Do you believe that in that they value death and the rest of the world values life, do you believe that this was choreographed by them to sacrifice their own people as pawns in a public relations ploy?
Well, without a doubt. I mean, because they as I told you, at gunpoint, they were trying to keep their civilians in danger. They didn't care if people died. In fact, they cherished it because they could put it on the main news channels and so on, and poison people's minds. But look, there's a question here, Dr. Feldman. I think it's a very crucial one. If we accept the fact that terrorists embed themselves in civilian areas and thereby purchase immunity, then no one is safe. It's the same thing. Just imagine the Allies in World War II fighting the Nazis. They land in Europe, they land in France, and then they proceed into Germany. And every town they come in, there'll be German soldiers embedded in civilian neighborhoods shooting at you, and you say, well, we can't shoot them back because there'll be unintended civilian casualties. So obviously the Allies wouldn't have won World War II. And in fact, democracies would be completely hobbled and crippled. Israel has done something else. It said, look, we'll target as best as we can the terrorists, but we will not give them immunity. We'll move as best as we can the population, the civilian population, out of the zone of combat. We will not give the terrorists immunity. And ultimately, we're very close to finishing off the terrorists. We have to complete the job. And then we have, I think, a possibility of an entirely new Middle East. Remember that President Trump and I, together, in his first term, basically facing Iran, they knew that we were going to be very tough on Iran. President knocked out Qasem Soleimani, who was the architect of Iran's plan to conquer the Middle East. And we were doing a few things to Iran too, okay? So the Arab countries felt confident in moving towards us. They were less bullied by Iran.